Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome to Low-sal-life. Today we're going to be talking about can elimination diets increase your risk of more sensitivities and what is the risk of doing an elimination diet. For the most part, I found one research article that said that there could be an issue, and beyond that I have scoured the internet, research articles, and YouTube for anything that could support this in a different way. So if you have, after you watch the video, if you have some more resources, please drop them in the comments and I will look them up and read them and share out on them. Okay, so the first thing I want to start off with is that elimination diets are so helpful for most of the foods that can cause issues. We really only have testing for like IgE allergy testing, which may be a blood test. In very small situations can you do like a skin test. I know some people that may react to like a skin contact test to like nickel allergy. They may do better not only eliminating nickel on their skin, but also removing nickel from their diet. But outside of that, there's really not very much besides in the IgE allergy test, eating it, do you have a reaction? And so the opposite of that is if you remove it, do you get better? And pretty much when you're looking at all of the different types of foods, you can check out my other video that I made recently, which is titled at Food School, trying to figure out like your food triggers or your food sensitivities. There's just so much. There's proteins, there's other types of protein sensitivities, there's amino acids that can throw your system out of whack, there's deficiencies, there's, in my case, salicylate sensitivity and reacting to chemicals or natural chemicals found in lots of foods, whether it's fresh fruits and vegetables or spices or whatever it might be. So in order for me to figure out what my sensitivities were, I had to do an elimination diet. And by the time I got to the salicylate sensitivity elimination diet, I had already done, I don't know, 7 to 10 elimination diets before that. So yeah, it was really the only tool that I had. And you have a journal and you keep track of how you feel and everything like that. So this is from, I think it's an article or a chapter within a book, but it's titled Elimination Diets. And it was pretty easy to find one of these quotes, but pretty much elimination diets have proven efficacy in symptom control and patient satisfaction in various disease processes. And this is important, are backed by various randomized controlled trials and observational studies. Great. Elimination diets are effective and they are backed by science. Next. All right. The next couple of slides are going to be like problems that you might have after being on an elimination diet. Oh, I got one more thing on here I wanted to include. Down here, you'll notice that I put elimination diets include a reintroduction phase. So there's a challenge phase in elimination diets. So you can't, I guess I could have removed all of the salicylates out of my diet and then been happy and never eat another fruit veg ever again. But in order to really prove that you have a sensitivity to salicylates, you need to consume some types of salicylates and have a reaction again that says, yes, that is what's triggering it. Because what can happen is you end up with way more foods restricted than you need to. So it's really important that, maybe I tease apart that I'm not reacting to fiber in my diet or amines or something like that. So that's a really important part of elimination diets. Okay, so one thing that can happen on an elimination diet, it's called the swap out rule, is what I call it. And the question is, did you swap out one ingredient for another and now are you feeling worse? So I did this with dairy. Right before I found out about salicylates, I decided to go on a dairy-free diet, which I had done maybe like 10 years before, but I really hadn't tried it at that time recently. And so what I ended up doing was I increased a whole bunch of salicylate foods. I didn't realize it. And I ended up, instead of having like cream in my coffee, I had coconut cream. And instead of having butter on my corn, I put avocado oil on it. And instead of having, whatever it might be, I ended up, almond milk for just dairy in general. So I ended up replacing all of these high salicylate foods in place of dairy, and I ended up getting very, very sick. So dairy was a safe food for me, and all of these other foods were not safe. And so I totally ended up, so I felt bad here, in just moderation between the two without any restriction. I decreased dairy, increased salicylates, but it turned out I was sensitive to salicylates. What I ended up doing in the long run was doing a total flip where I consume a lot of dairy, and then down here I consume barely any salicylates. So that's what's working out for me very well. But that can happen while you're on an elimination diet, but you might continue that. Let's say, it wasn't dairy, but I ended up staying on a low dairy diet and continuing to eat all these other foods in my new diet. That could end up being a problem. This is common with people that go gluten-free. They replace foods that are high in fiber or high in salicylates for other stuff. So, they're eating, let's say a bagel for breakfast and some bread on their sandwich for lunch. And now that they know they have to take out gluten, what they'll end up doing is replacing it with something else. So they increase their fiber, or they eat a lot of like leafy greens, like maybe instead of a salad, instead of a sandwich, you have a salad. And so that could be an issue where it's a change in fiber or a change in the salicylate level. I know when I went gluten-free, I didn't eat wheat for 12 years, and I ended up eating a lot of corn products, but corn has salicylates in it, so that really wasn't a great switch for me. Okay, another phenomenon is a loss of tolerance. And tolerance is this is really common. And this is a problem after you try and reintroduce the foods. And so it's really important when reintroducing foods that you do it very slowly. What happens is we stop making the enzyme to break down that food, or we become more sensitive to its effects. So I have 3 here that include different enzymes that, I forgot to fact check alcohol dehydrogenase. That's just in my long-term memory here. Yep, okay, we're good. Perfect. All right, I learned about alcohol dehydrogenase when I was in school, like, I don't know, 13 years ago, but it's just one of those that are in your long-term memory. You want to make sure that you have the right terms when you're talking about it with other people. Okay, so lactose is one. We have a lactase enzyme, especially when we're born. It's really critical for us as we're developing. And then the more that we grow up, our bodies produce less lactase. And in some cases, if you stop drinking lactose, then your body will stop making lactase. So when you go back and you put milk back in your diet, you're not going to be able to tolerate it very well. Alcohol is another one that we're familiar with, right? Like if you don't drink very often, you can get pretty buzzed off of one shot. We'll say gin because that's the only one that I can really drink. But if you drink often, you may end up needing 3 or 4 shots to feel the effects of the alcohol. And what that is that the alcohol dehydrogenase is breaking down alcohol. And as you consume more alcohol, your body's like, oh, we got to take care of this. We're going to keep making more and more of this enzyme so that we don't get sick. Some people just don't have the enzymes very well, like they don't make them very well because of genetics, and some of them we build up due to tolerance. I'm going to skip to some vegetables, some foods that we eat. When we chew certain foods, we produce amylase in our mouth, and then we also have other proteins. And if we don't have a food that we see very often, then our body isn't going to respond to break that down. So it's really important when you try new foods after you don't have them for a while that you try them in small bits, because you might not react to those foods. You just may not be able to digest them because you're not making that enzyme. So if you tell your body, hey, today we're gonna try a new food, tomorrow we're gonna try a little tiny bit more of that food, and then your body will be like, oh, okay, we need to start making these enzymes so that we can digest the food properly. It's also useful for fat, and like if you're trying to move up on a more like ketogenic or carnivore diet or high fat diet, you want to start with small amounts of fat and then bump it up so that your body can make the digestive enzymes in order to take care of them. Salicylates is one that's a little tiny bit different, and the reason why I'm going to call it out just a little bit differently is because, like, for me, my body just reacts to it. So it's more of like a stimulus. It functions more like an allergy for me, where my body's like, oh, this is not cool, let's flip out. And so for me, it seems more like a toxin in my body than not being able to break it down. I haven't quite completely figured out all the systems of salicylate breakdown. I know that there's a phenol, detox, sulfur, liver 3 issue where you can like break down phenols, and that's like, happening in our body. But I think there's a lot of different things at play with salicylates. And so I'm going to just say that that one is a little bit different, where you can just react to the chemical rather than not being able to break it down. You feel free to comment, leave info in the comments if you feel one way or the other as far as that goes. But as far as I'm concerned, I've never really seen an enzyme responsible for the breakdown of salicylates. But hopefully we'll get to that point and I'll be able to tease everything apart and make a video on that in the future. Okay, this one here is about functional loss. So sometimes our organs just stop functioning properly. And I already mentioned kind of some fat issues, but the gallbladder is one example of this, where, because of diet culture and we think that a low-fat diet is really healthy for us. What happens is that tells the gallbladder we're not going to eat very much fat. And so it stops producing bile and making these contractions. And so it affects bile secretion, so that later on, if you stop your diet and you go on a moderate fat diet or a high fat diet, you may end up with some issues because that organ isn't functioning properly anymore. This here, it's not too hard to find very much information about this. This is just a quote I pulled out of this article, Modified Dietary Fat Intake for Treatment of Gallstone Disease. So this says, furthermore, if restricting dietary fat does lead to a reduction in gallbladder contractions and emptying, it may also increase the risk of gallstone deposition, as lithogenic bile would be retained longer in the gallbladder, thus potentially exacerbating the problems. So in these cases, you may end up causing a gallbladder issue, or it just might take a while for your gallbladder to be like, oh, hey, we're back on, no longer on the bench. We're ready to go out there and play, and we're ready to start working on fat and high fat so that it can start functioning properly. Okay, and another situation could be a nutrient or mineral deficiency. If you're doing an elimination diet for a few days or a few weeks, it's not going to be a problem. What ends up being a problem is people like me need to be basically on, this isn't an elimination diet for me, this is a permanent diet. I know that salicylates make me sick. And some of these might be lifestyle diets like the carnivore diet. So if you do it for a short amount of time, you should have enough buildup of all of these nutrients and minerals in your body. However, if you have chronic illness, then you may already have a deficiency and not know what it is. So doing an elimination diet may exacerbate it. One thing that I've been kind of interested in is about vitamin C and the carnivore diet. So I've been looking into that a lot. and one phenomenon where people develop histamine intolerance after being on a carnivore diet for a long time. For the most part, most people on carnivore are like, there's vitamin C in meat, you only need a really small amount. It's really not about vitamin C, it's about too much vitamin A that causes scurvy. And ultimately, if you're not eating carbohydrates, then you don't need vitamin C. Okay, that's a great argument, but are there other things that you might need vitamin C for? You guys know I focus a lot on dopamine, and lo and behold, between dopamine and stress hormone, stress neurotransmitters, you need vitamin C there to make that conversion. And then also there's this other one called DAO. This is an enzyme that helps break up histamine in your gut before it goes into your body. So food, especially high protein foods, can have histamine, and your body's supposed to make DAO to break it up so it doesn't get absorbed into your body. And if you have other digestive issues, like intestinal permeability, also known as leaky gut, some of those histamines can go straight into your bloodstream. So there can be other complications too. So vitamin C and iron are required to make DAO. Let's say you go on carnivore diet for a few months to a year to many years, and you aren't taking a vitamin C supplement. It's possible that you may no longer make this DAO enzyme as well, right? Because you don't have the building blocks to make it. These are a couple of places that I've found examples of this. I'm not talking about having histamine intolerance and then going on carnivore diet, because most people in that situation do have relief of histamine intolerance. But I am talking about how you don't have that to start with, and then long-term carnivore diet ends up causing these problems. So this is something that's happening to me currently. I've kind of been mixed for about a year on stewed meat, but I've recently done I've had some really bad reactions, but ultimately I've tried this with all sorts of meats, chicken, beef, pork. The last one I tried was deer, and the deer one was exceptionally helpful because it was the same deer, and I was able to eat plenty of ground deer fresh, just cook it up. And then I had a deer roast, and I cooked that on the, stewed on the crock pot over like 8 or 9 hours. And I reacted to the stewed deer, which is likely due to an increase in histamine from the long cooked process. This one here, I also ruled out rendered fat or high fat because there was no fat in this stewed deer. So I've been having other issues like reacting to wet aged meat, where if I just get fresh meat from the grocery store, I don't react to that. Any meats that have been aged. I'm not having issues with cheeses or other aged or like sauerkraut I don't react to. So it's specifically about meat. But anyway, so that's why I'm looking into this. Here are a couple quotes. I was completely carnivore for about 8 to 9 months before I started getting histamine reactions. I never eat any plants, spices, or dairy, just meat, salt, and water. I was getting anxiety, heart palpitations, flushing, blood sugar issues, and diarrhea. I didn't know what it was at first. I have since healed most of my histamine problems by eating only fresh meat, straight from the freezer, and no leftovers. I also ate nearly raw for a few months, which helped. I haven't tried any slow-cooked meat or bone broth for a while, but plan on giving it a try again some other day. Here's another one. I'm 4 months into a strict carnivore diet and have been having the major bouts of itching, which I had never had before. I even get small patches of hives that go along with it, but not always. Seems odd that this started so late into the diet from what I've heard. And here's another one. This is a wonderful video by Michaela Peterson with Dr. Ben Lynch. And Michaela talks a lot mostly about mold sensitivity. She had mold exposure in her home, but she has gone from, she saw relief going on a carnivore diet, but now she exclusively is having issues with aged meat and histamine issues. So this is a phenomenon that's happening, and it's possible that the elimination diet, that we're not getting enough of everything we need. And I think that it might have something to do with vitamin C. Something's happening. All right. This is, I think I lost a slide point. So this is another thing that can happen during elimination diets, and that is that your body has an order of operations for healing and for defense. Once you clear out the danger in one place, it can focus on another system or stimulus. Just kind of keep that in mind, that as you heal, and I'm sure if you've dealt with chronic pain and illness that you probably have already noticed this, but we don't heal linearly. I'll notice this all the time. Like, I'll feel really energetic one day, and then the next day I won't feel good, and then I'll be like, what's going on? You know, did I eat something? It might just be a, wave toward healing. One thing that I noticed, like when I went on a low-sal diet, is first of all, my muscles felt really good the next day. I just thought it was a good day, but it was really helpful that I had found the main culprit in my pain. And so I got progressively better. And I noticed my muscles and my stomach responded the best at first, but altogether it wasn't for like 4 to 6 months before my sinuses started clearing up and I was able to breathe through my nose, and my tonsils started decreasing and swelling. So all of that healed way later. And so I'm just saying that because places that don't have a lot of circulation, or that might not be as important, like I know that the blood vessels in your nose and sinuses are really super, super tiny, which is why medicine in that area is really challenging to implement. But I noticed that these areas that were really hard to get to in my body just healed later. And with that, sometimes you can, like in that case, when the swelling in my face started to go down, then I started getting sniffly. I had stuff draining. You know, like your inflammation decreases and then stuff can drain. So that's kind of gross, but it's part of the healing process, and it didn't happen for me in the very beginning. So your body has an order of operations, and it's important to think about that on what is most important for your body to heal. The second thing is, once you clear out the danger in one place, it can focus on another system or stimulus. So when I went low-sal, just going on a low-salicylate diet improved so much for me. So much. And I remember packaging up all of like my mint toothpaste and my shampoos and conditioners, which I used all of that in the first month during my elimination diet. Once my symptoms improved, then I was like, man, I don't know if this toothpaste is that great for me. And once I removed, like I'm still kind of reacting to it, although I felt so much better. But your body, you'll start noticing, because that sensitivity is because all the other noise decreases, you can finally notice your body will tell you that, hey, this is bothering me. So it's not like I wasn't allergic to mint toothpaste or maybe fragrance shampoo. I remember using the Head and Shoulders shampoo for a long time, probably for a full year after going salicylate free. But ultimately, it wasn't that I developed sensitivities to those. It was that I decreased this, my body was healing, and then now it could tell me when it was really upset by things. The more that you kind of refine that, you'll notice those symptoms, where if you're chronically ill and you just have chronic fatigue and chronic illness, you're not going to be able to tease any of that apart. So it's not that that you've added new stimuli. It's that it's just more noticeable, and your body can react to it like it's supposed to. I'm gonna slip this one in here. I forgot this slide. Here's my Canvas stuff. This one here, I'm gonna mention, watch out for withdrawals, paradox reactions, and Herxheimer reactions. So when I went on a low-sal diet, I did have some withdrawal symptoms. So if you're doing, gluten or dairy, anything that I know oxalates can have this effect in salicylates. So your body becomes used to a certain level of a chemical or protein or compound in your body. So when you take it away too suddenly, you can start having reactions. I had that with the salicylate sensitivity about a week later. Unfortunately, because I didn't have a good list, to work with, I was still consuming salicylates too, and I was trying to see how much I could get away with. That's why I made the site, because I think what I called a withdrawal period, which was from week 1 to about week 4, I think it probably was really only about a week or so, but I was eating things like peas and green beans and still really trying to be healthy by eating lots of green vegetables and fruit and everything that were on those lists. Brussels sprouts. Oh my gosh, I remember getting so sick from a little soup I made with like Brussels sprouts and peas. Ugh. Anyway, so you can have a withdrawal from those chemicals in your body. Just keep an eye out for that. When I've gone dairy-free, I've definitely felt pretty bad the first day or two, and that's because of that withdrawal. The paradox reaction. This is a situation where you need something in your body and you provide it. Like you truly are deficient and you provide it. Then your body's like, oh yeah, we got it. It starts functioning and is like, let's put these into action. But then all of a sudden, what ends up happening is you might have a decrease in other minerals or vitamins that are used to support this function, and then you can end up kind of feeling sick after that. So it's kind of like a supply and demand kind of situation. Like, oh, hot dogs. Hot dogs are a great example. So you end up, you buy your 8 hot dogs and your 6 buns. Is that how it is? It's 6 hot dogs, 8 buns. So you end up, being deficient in 2 hot dogs. You buy another pack of hot dogs. You're like, yeah. And then you end up putting, making all of your hot dogs, and then you have no buns, and then you have like extra of this other stuff. So ends up in this like weird balance where you're basically missing other nutrients because you need this other nutrient so bad. So just kind of keep an eye on that. There's one in particular about thiamine that can cause this paradox reaction. I think the relationship between folate and B12 is another one where the folate and B12 match up. And if you have it in a situation where it's not matching, you can have some issues. The last one is Herxheimer reactions. This is more related to actual infections. So anything, and possibly maybe metals, but if you have an infection and you take an antibiotic, you can have a sudden die-off of bacteria or mold or whatever, and pretty much the compounds from that die-off can be kind of toxic to your body, and so you can react to that. This can happen with elimination diets, like if you are having issues with yeasts or molds and you stop feeding it sugar, you can have a sudden die-off with that. And those can be severe. So I don't recommend doing those by yourself. Definitely talk with at least your primary about it, because you could potentially need some extra support during that process, especially for like mold removal and heavy metals removal. Okay. So I scoured the internet. I feel like I did due diligence. I mean, I looked all over. And I remember watching a video about this like super sensational thing about like if you do elimination diets, you're going to have an increased risk in allergies and sensitivities and stuff. And I looked. This is the only paper that I could find that was related to this, 2017. This is in particular for true allergies, true IgE food allergies. And this is in particular about children. So basically what this paper ended up studying was about elimination diets in children. They're trying to figure out which food sensitivities these children have. So what ended up happening is in some situations, the children who did not have a tree nut allergy, their parents put them on a tree nut elimination diet. They restricted them. And then in the long run, even though the kids didn't have any signs that they were allergic to tree nuts and didn't have any like response or elimination of symptoms by removing the tree nuts, they ended up having a long-term effect of developing tree nut allergies in the future. So there were a lot of different situations. One example was like a child who didn't have a tree nut allergy, but their sibling did, and so they just weren't exposed to tree nuts. So during that early time, the kid didn't have tree nuts, but because they were never exposed to it, in the future they ended up developing tree nut allergy. This is the only thing that I can find. If you have more information, please leave some information down below, because this kind of stuff is really important to know, and I'm happy to report out on it. But I'll read this last little bit. Tree nuts are often eliminated from the diet of multiple food allergic patients despite their low probability for allergy. Sensitization and allergy to most tree nuts exist years later, suggesting that it developed during the period of elimination. Okay, so I'll cover some more of this stuff in the future, but these are some elimination diets that you can check out if you're suffering with problems. I put this one on top because this is the most popular one. It's the 6-food elimination diet. This is mostly used with like true food allergies. So eliminating milk products, eggs, wheat, soy, peanuts or tree nuts, and fish and shellfish. These are the most common foods, and so eliminating those, usually a lot of people will get better if they're sensitive to it, because it's just a numbers game. If you've already done the true allergy and you've done like these major allergens, then you might want to consider some of these other chemical sensitivities. So as I mentioned, I do a low-salicylate diet. I run the website low-sal-life.com, and if you want to try that one, I've got lots of resources and food levels on salicylates there, including all of original research listed there, so it's easy to find and use. With the exception of the amines issue recently, I have only been sensitive to salicylates. When I saw the list, I knew that was, I just knew that was my problem when I saw the list. So what I ended up doing was just removing the medium and high foods off of a low salicylate diet, and that's where I started. And then I figured if I was still sick, then I could try other sensitivities. These two here are good resources if you want to learn about all the other chemicals. Sue Dengate runs the Food Intolerance Network, and it includes mostly amines, salicylates, glutamates, sulfites, and color and additives. And the website's fedup.com.au. And then the RPA Hospital is the one, they do a lot of research around it and a lot of patient care. They're in Australia, and they do amines, glutamates, sulfites, and salicylates. And let's see if I have that book nearby. I think that's the last slide. The Sue Dengate one is really nice because they have a lot of resources on their website that are free to use. But if you really want to get into it, the RPA Hospital has these resources. These are not only food lists for all the different chemicals, but they also have information about where the lifestyle chemicals can come in and affect you, how to manage healthcare and medical stuff, and then also how to actually do the elimination diet and how to do the reintroduction of foods. This is also one of their books, which is Friendly Food, and so basically it covers how to eat a balanced diet on lots of low amine, low salicylate foods. So, all right, and if you don't want to go and check out books or a website, this video, Introduction to Salicylates, is a quick overview that I made that talks about what salicylates are, where you can find them, and how to avoid them. All right, thanks so much for spending some time with me. I hope you feel better. Take care. Bye.